Hi, welcome to the small shed. This Saturday I'm finally getting to once again confront my nemesis, water and plumbing, after about a year's delay. See you in a minute. Right, so we're in the front room today with a little job I've got. You may wonder why there's a box on a table holding the radiator up, and that's the reason. It's coming off the wall. And before we start, the idiot that put the radiator on the wall with roll plugs is in front of you. In my defence, it lasted well over 25 years without being a problem. I think I knew it was wrong at the time. I can't remember the thought process that went into it, but there is a good reason for it. I can't remember what it was, that's all. Now, I think it was grandson number one decided when he was starting to walk, toddle, whatever, he climbed up it and pulled it the one day, and it pulled the one connection out at one end. Not a problem, it wasn't any, the other three were holding quite happily. Spool forward about 4 years until this time last year, and I came down one morning and looked, and this radiator was sort of hanging out to about here. And this was just at the time my wife had been diagnosed with the cancer that we were just about to go into operation for, and I just freaked. I think it was one of those things that one of the reasons I wasn't making videos and haven't in the last couple of months or whatever is that your mind just doesn't work normally. And I saw this and I just completely, my mind just completely went out. I went out into the kitchen and I could have screamed. And I sort of propped things against it in the hope that it might go away, I think, I don't know. Knowing full well that me and water don't get on very well. So I thought we'll deal with this when I've got the headspace to deal with it. That was that. I thought we'll do it when the summer comes next year, we can sort it out then. And of course, as with all these things, you forget to do these things or they get put to one side. And then we had another little hiccup after the holiday with my wife, and it's just been left and left. Today I'm going to deal with it. Now, it's a fairly straightforward job, I think. I've got to take the radiator off the wall, take these brackets off the back of it and refix them somehow, and I don't quite know how I'm going to refix them yet. The main thing is to stabilise it. At one point in my head, a day or two after this had happened, at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're not at your best, my head was telling me that these holes were about that big, and that I'd got a massive problem to sort out. In the cold light of day, they're not actually that bad. I may well still revert to some sort of toggle on it, and I know I shouldn't be fixing to plasterboard with a radiator that big, but I really have not got the time and energy to start ripping all this out, putting timber in or whatever else. It's possible I can go through into the blockwork, the other side of the, because this is either dot and dab, I can't remember what I did with it now. But we will get to that when we get the thing off the wall first and see where we are. The bottom two are holding, but I suspect they will also be in a poorly way. So really I need to get all four done. I think the first thing I need to do is to establish where these things are landing on the wallpaper, so when I come to put it back together again, it'll all be in the right place. And we'll get on from there. But before I do anything like that, I'm going to turn the water off the radiator. Normally you'd just switch the valves off at either end. In this instance, when I plumbed this in and did all the work originally, I put a pair of ball valves in the pipework under there, so I can actually get at those and tighten them up, switch those off, and then I know the radiators can be drained down and I don't have to mess with rebalancing it afterwards, because the settings on the end valves are a bit marginal with this. They take an awful lot of time to get balanced, so that this isn't taking all the heat or the rest of the house is stopping this one working. Whereas with the little ball valves in the side, I can just cut it off there. So we'll get a screwdriver, get those turned off, and then we'll start and drain it down. We'll put some protection down on the floor, otherwise we'll be in big trouble from the domestic authorities, I'm sure, if we fill the carpet with dirty water. Not a great deal of room in there, but to drain. But we will see how we get on. And then the other thing I want to do is to try and get some of the load off all this. So I'm just going to put a block of wood underneath it and try and lift it up enough just to take all that load off, which is probably what I should have done at the start of this a year ago. But as I say, I wasn't thinking straight. Fortunately, there's a bung I've just noticed in the end of the radiator that should enable me to get majority of the water out without quite as much problem. And if I remember right, they've got rubber seals on them as well. To hear of gurgling, and then we'll open the bleed at the top, and that should let air in. What's encouraging with this is that it's a system that's 43 years old, I think now, the basic pipework, although we've had a new boiler. When they put the new boiler in about 5 years ago, they did a power flush on the whole system. They were there almost a day just flushing water through it, and considering it's been running well for 5 years since then with an annual inspection, the water is remarkably clear, whereas before, whenever I took a radiator off, it used to be filthy, horrible water. So I think the inhibitor and that they put in it, which gets topped up every year, is certainly working well. Right, that's got all the water out of the rad pretty much. There's obviously still a little bit in pipe work here and there, but I'm not too worried about that. I was more concerned about getting the weight out of this. I'm just slackening off the bottom fixing brackets. What I'll do then is I'll just loosen the two valve connections, and what that should enable me to do is to fold the rad down effectively without actually disconnecting it. And we've got one good fixing out of the three, which I'm inclined to leave alone. Okay, so that's got me toggles from Screwfix. Let's just see what we've got to do with them. I'll say I think the holes that we've got in the wall are not that much different to the hole sizes you need to get the toggles in the first place. So I would need, it's only just about the right size. Given that these are used to fix radiators quite often in the house, I'm sort of well, I won't say happy using them, but I'm content to use them, I think. I will need to get some big washers to go under the heads, otherwise these things will fall off. I think we'll just clean these up, put the get the plaster off them, and then see if we can't get them put back. If I remember right, the secret to putting these things in is to push them in, let them spring out, and then you pull back on them while you drive in, because otherwise they just go round on the other side. But we shall see. It's been a while since I've used them, and like everything else, they appear to be slightly more flimsy and thinner, but maybe that's just old age. That's it, they've gone. Tight fit. Right, time to try and get the radiator back on. I've wiped the radiator back down, got most of the rubbish off that, cobwebs and things, wiped the wall down a bit, wiped the skirting down. Let's see if we can get this to go back on where it belongs without too much distress. One in. Not that it's difficult to get one in. Two in. Three in. That one looks a bit higher, don't it? Four in. Oh yes, we're back on the wall. These blue sheets that I got from the scrap store have come in again, once again. They were effectively being sold as scrap, so that was £4 for a basket full of them. And I debated whether to get any this time because I'd already got some. I'm so glad I did, because whilst they won't stop moisture getting through, they effectively work as a filter to keep the muck out of the carpet anyway. Good. Time to tighten it all up, and I think we're there. Next thing I think is to make sure everything is tightened up. The valve, bleed valve, which I will need to get at later on, but I'm not going to worry about that for the moment. The big opening thing that I had undone at the bottom that wants to be tightened up so that we don't get any water coming out there. These are better because they've got a rubber seal on them, as I said before, but now is the test really. I've got to fill it back up again, and this is where I hate water. With electrics it'll just go bang and it'll stop working or whatever, and you can go about sorting it out. With this, if I fill the radiator up, half an hour later you'll find it's leaking. You've got to drain the whole thing down again and start all over again. In this instance what I'm going to do is just let a little bit of water in and then leave it for a bit, turn it back off again, so that I can see whether or not there's any seepage occurring, so that if there is a problem I can start and deal with it without, when there's not too much water in the whole system. Right, so it's been on for, water's been on full now. I've bled the whole radiator up to full temperature. It's got 1.5 bar on the boiler, so it's got a bit of pressure on it. And so far, touch wood, all is heat holding. So I'm quite happy with that. Now, I know it was probably not done right in the first place, and that it's probably not been repaired quite as well as it might have been, but for me this hasn't been about the radiator, it's been about what's in my head, I think, most of the time. I didn't do this because it was a problem, and sometimes you're better to pick your battles when you're ready to actually deal with what it is you're dealing with. In this instance, if things hadn't gone well with my wife, this would have stayed probably another winter like it was. But as it is, when the sun's shining and things are all right with the world, things go better sometimes. So hopefully that solves our problem. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll be doing something different, and I'll see you then. Bye.